You cannot build a life in a casino. You cannot build a future in a casino. But if you look around at the state of things, gambling in various forms is being touted as a legitimate way to get ahead in life. And I would imagine that it has become so popularized and normalized because the traditional ways of getting ahead just do not exist anymore or do not function anymore. And so I guess it follows that buying lottery tickets in various forms is one of the last things left that, in theory, could give someone hope of getting ahead and building a life and building a future. Of course, that won't happen for the vast majority, and anyone who gambles as a way of life would not have the financial literacy to manage money if they got it in the first place. Now, I'm not just making this video because it's a pertinent topic, although it is. This is not simply a trend that I'm noticing and others are noticing, and it's not really as bad as you might think. It's not like that. What actually spurred me to make this video was I was reading an article the other day about Meta. So, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, whatever, working on an app or a website or whatever called, I think it was called Arena. And they were doing this to compete with other online gambling platforms like, Kalshi and Polymarket and other platforms like that. So, of course, they wouldn't be doing that unless this really truly was a big market with potentially billions of dollars. So that alone tells you that it has been normalized. Now, gambling has always been with us. It has always been a part of society. I would not say otherwise. There have always been lottery tickets. There have always been card games that guys would get together and gamble money on and things like this. And there's been sports betting, whether it's been legal or not. But just like so many other things, because we are in a declining civilization, we've just decided to throw off all constraints and just normalize it across the board. So, think about other things like, I don't know what I can say on YouTube, but certain substances that have been normalized, or screen addiction, which, started out as internet addiction, that became normalized, and then it became smartphones, and then it became screen addiction and social media addiction. And now it's, short form content addiction. It's basically been something that was understood as bad, and yet because it became so commonplace, society just threw off the reins and said, go and do whatever. And so gambling is one of those things now. And when I looked into it, because I don't do this, of course, but it really shocked me just how much you can gamble on. And really, the answer is you can gamble on anything. And again, I looked into this, and you can gamble on things like, okay, will this person attend this sporting event? And if they do, what kind of clothing will they be wearing? Or stuff like, will they take, X number of bathroom breaks during the game? And just insane stuff like this. I mean, and again, I understand the gambler's mindset, I'm sure, is a very specific mindset, but I could not fathom thinking that I somehow can figure out things like that to the point where I would be willing to risk money over it. I cannot understand that. I cannot fathom that. But apparently this is something a lot of people, or enough people, think they can do, because if they didn't, there wouldn't be this kind of market for it. Anyway, I was thinking about why this has become so common, and like I said, I think the main reason is that the traditional ways of getting ahead in life, of building a life and a future and becoming successful, are vanishing. And I mean, if you think about it, even the concept of things like higher education, which was for a long time, especially after World War II, was considered the way you started out in life, and it was not a gamble. But over time, when the federal government got into it, and therefore student loans became common, which of course pushed the price of college up, well, the trend over time is really akin to becoming like a lottery ticket of sorts. You're basically putting a lot of money on your piece of paper. That piece of paper will get you a good job and set you up for building a future. And Like I said, at one time, it wasn't really a gamble. It was go to college and get a degree, any degree. And this was way before there were tons and tons of stupid degrees, of course. But it would set you up. It wasn't a gamble, it was an investment. But now it really is like a gamble. And there are people who go to college and they bet so much of their future on that piece of paper being their ticket into a better future. And this is still happening. It's not happening as much as it used to. Of course, it seems like Gen Z is maybe starting to wake up and smell the dying roses. But for my generation, millennials, the whole thing was go to college, go to college, go to college. And your classmates would say that, school people would say that, administrators, counselors, people on the radio and TV, they would all say that. It was the same message. And so that part of our day-to-day life has gotten so bad that it is basically like gambling. Entering a certain field in the job market is like gambling, because you might go to college for something and graduate with a certain degree with a certain skill set, and by the time you actually get to the job market, your skill is not needed anymore. So again, that is analogous to gambling. Now, it's not lottery ticket at the gas station style gambling, but it is a form of gambling, especially when we know now just how precarious the whole setup is. It kind of just keeps spilling over. So let's say you can eventually afford a house. Well, traditionally that was great, because by then you would have the higher education, you would have the job or the career, you would have the wife and kids. Your life was already set up, and that was just how you sort of put a frame around it and some more stability around it. But you had the other things first, and they were a lot more stable, at least since the end of World War II especially, but even before that. But now, say you buy a house. Well, you're basically betting on you keeping your job, and you can get laid off after years and years. It's happened to me. It's happened to virtually everybody at this point, except the very well-connected and wealthy. You're betting that your marriage will stay strong if you're fortunate enough to have that in the first place. But of course, what's happened over the decades, divorce rates went up too, to the point where marriage became, in many ways, like a bet, like a form of gambling in a way. And so, I'm not saying that the intent all along by the power elite was, okay, we've got to turn society into a big casino. I think it's more a consequence than the plan in and of itself. This is a natural result of this kind of instability and uncertainty. And when you create conditions that make it very risky or impossible to build a life in a future, then people quit doing that and they start doing more risky things. They start doing things that might utterly change their lives in a bad way, but they just don't care because they weren't really going in a good direction anyway and had no hope of going in a good direction. And I imagine there are a lot of people who are not YOLOing into Polymarket or whatever, but they're maybe putting in a few bucks a month because it is the modern day lottery ticket. They know it's a dream, they know it's a fantasy, but they do it anyway because that's perhaps the only way left they can see where they might actually get life-changing money. And so on the extreme off chance that you got, say, a high six-figure or some seven-figure payout, that it won't solve all your problems, but that would let you afford a house. That might let you retire early or at all. That would at least give you a cushion. It would give you FU money if you hated your job. It would be able to soften the blow of a marriage or a relationship or a family falling apart. And that without that kind of money, you just would suffer and bear the brunt of all of these things directly and fully. And probably odds are, if you suffered one in life, you're going to hit another two or three after that at some point, and maybe all together. So anyway, this is just one of the more disturbing trends that I really think it cannot go anywhere good. And it's the product of us not as a society going anywhere good. But, I don't participate in it myself. I don't think I ever would. even if I got really desperate, because it's just, like I said, it's a dream or a fantasy. But if you partake of online gambling platforms, or you know someone who does, or if you have a different perspective, please let us know in the comments, because I would really like to understand all of this a little bit more. And if you have any insights into why people do it that you think I missed in this video, please let me know, because I really would like to add that into the conversation. And if enough people share their ideas, I will try to make a follow-up video about it. So thanks for listening. And if you wouldn't mind liking and sharing and subscribing, that would help me out a lot. Trying to grow this channel. I started it not so long ago, only about maybe like 5 or 6 weeks ago. And I want to cover more and more topics that are relevant to our day-to-day lives and where society is going. I think these are fascinating, if morbid, discussions. So again, thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next one.